afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, April 1st. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm, to be found on Spreaker.com. Today's podcast is going to discuss snow squalls. But before we do so, we're going to give a little bit of a weather synopsis of the United States, or at least discuss some of the weather impacts, the severe weather impacts that are going on right now in the United States. And after the discussion of snow squalls, we're going to discuss a weather synopsis, speak about more weather about the United States. Hope everyone enjoys. Today on the weather map, we have two areas in this country that are going to be strongly impacted by potential severe weather. The first one is in Florida, where we have severe thunderstorms. And we know severe thunderstorms are dangerous. They could also sometimes produce tornadoes, not always. It's that front that came across the country throughout the week, but on the East Coast yesterday, that has stalled over central Florida. So Orlando, Florida is right in the bullseye of this. But some of the storms may hit North Miami later on in the day today. That's a possibility. But Orlando really is right in the bullseye of this severe weather. The other part of this country is the Northeast. Snow squalls might develop later today. We heard from earlier in the week, we know how dangerous snow squalls are from that accident that happened on the highway in Pennsylvania. Snow squalls produce whiteout conditions within a very short period of time. The snow squalls today are not expected to be as strong as they were last week because the air mass last week responsible for was an Arctic air mass. The air mass today is of Pacific origin. It's a Canadian air mass. It is cold enough for snow. There's a moderation effect from the Pacific Ocean. Therefore, the temperatures in the upper atmosphere are not as cold, and conditions are a little bit more stable because of that. Regardless, computer models do not have the ability to accurately forecast thunderstorms too far in advance, anything more than 6 hours, maybe not even that. The National Weather Service of Chicago reports on the April 2nd, 2016 snow squall event in the Chicago area that snow squalls develop much in the same way that thunderstorms develop. They both are pop-up. They develop in the same way regardless of whether there's thunder or not. April 2nd in 2016, there were phenomenal snow squalls that moved across Chicago, producing whiteout conditions within a very short period of time. And these things are unpredictable. They pop up. The National Weather Service could have a general idea whether there will be snow squalls, but exactly where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and even the exact intensity is not known, until it happens. And even then, it's not so known. They invented the snow squall warning, which probably means people should stay off of the highways, since it's absolutely impossible to have enough warning about the whiteout conditions to be safe when driving on a highway. It doesn't seem like it's possible to do, because by the time you realize that you are in a dangerous situation, it's too late already. God forbid, it's already too late. So a person's much safer driving on regular streets. The tricky part about snow squalls is the fact that everywhere else it's not snowing at all. So a person's completely unaware of any danger at all. There's no snow on the ground many times. The snow squall reduces visibility to zero, so it's especially dangerous when driving on the highways. So granted, the snow squalls are not forecasted to be as heavy today as they were last week, but nonetheless, snow squalls are still in the forecast. This past Monday is when we saw the snow squalls in Pennsylvania. Last Friday, something amazing happened, something very similar to what happened in New Mexico a year ago. The National Weather Service issued 2 severe thunderstorm warnings, 2 of them in the Chicago area because of snow squalls, which also were producing thunder and lightning. Damaging wind gusts were reported. It happens to be that the damaging wind gusts of 72 miles per hour in Sugar Grove, Illinois, came with thunder and lightning, and it was cloud to ground lightning. So a severe thunderstorm warning was certainly the appropriate warning to be issued. But who would ever think there would be a severe thunderstorm in such cold weather? I don't think the snow accumulated, because the snow squalls last Friday were a combination of rain and snow and graupel, and temperatures were a little bit too warm. And I don't know if there was even whiteout conditions in the Chicago area last Friday, because not enough
enough of the precipitation was falling down as snow. The hazards here in Chicago were the damaging winds. Officially, a wind gust of 58 miles per hour or higher is considered damaging. The snow squalls on Monday, the hazard was the whiteout conditions, and I don't know too much about the wind. I'm sure there were gusty winds, maybe even damaging. I just don't know. That happened in Pennsylvania. It's easy to look up. But today we have, once again, in the Northeast, there's a chance for snow squalls, and those things are sudden bursts of heavy snow that could also come with damaging wind gusts, producing whiteout conditions. And as we saw last Friday, even if there's not whiteout conditions, there still could be damaging wind gusts. It's a very fascinating subject, something that many areas are not used to seeing, because there is no snow squall season. At least there's no season for it, at least in most areas. So it's not a common occurrence. Last Friday, what helped produce the snow squalls was the strong sun March solar insolation produced heating at the surface. There was no snow on the ground. There was no snow on the ground. That helped warm things, despite the fact there were clouds, but there also was some sun. That helped warm things, and we had unseasonably cold air aloft. Temperatures at 10,000 feet were 0 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees below 0 Celsius, and that's about the coldest you can get. It might have even broken a record. So when you have very cold air aloft and the air on the ground warms, warm air rises up into the upper atmosphere, and there's a dew point at the air. All the air has a dew point. It's holding a certain amount of moisture. The quicker that air rises and the quicker it gets into the colder air which is below the dew point, that produces the condensation. And as long as there is some type of a particle, a real substance, despite the fact it's invisible, if it's dust, it could be salt, it could be something, that produces a droplet, of a snowflake or something, and then it falls down to the ground. If there's no particles at all, the water vapor condenses and it remains liquid, believe it or not. Remains liquid. In any case, when you get temperatures really cold, the colder they are in the upper atmosphere, the larger contrast there is between the surface temperatures and the upper atmosphere, the heavier the updraft, the heavier the precipitation is going to be, also the stronger the updraft in many situations, especially if there's low pressure going overhead. That was the case last week. That was also the case back on April 2nd. April 2nd, though, it was also associated with a strong, fast-moving clipper that came out of Wisconsin into Chicago. Probably something similar in the New Mexico area. The rest of the country is being influenced by also, we have another low pressure system up affecting the plains, it's a wavy front over in the plains, producing showers, perhaps some thunderstorms, but no widespread severe weather is forecasted for the plains. Nonetheless, there could be some severe thunderstorms today in Texas and Oklahoma. So actually, it's not just Florida and the Northeast. There could be some pop-up, isolated, severe weather in Texas or Oklahoma, but then showers and thunderstorms along a wavy front over the plains. And our next storm system is moving into the Northwest Pacific today, producing its own precipitation. All of these things, of course, will be moving east. I don't know what's going on with that stationary front in Florida, but in general, over the next several days, there will be a stationary front. It could be the same one, which will set itself up along the Gulf states, and we're going to see our next severe weather outbreak associated with that coming Monday for the Gulf Coast, and then Tuesday for the Tennessee Valley, and then Wednesday, some of that mild air makes it up into the Chicago area. Nothing unseasonably warm, but some of that mild air makes it up into the Chicago area. A major highlight for next week, I think we could put the focus on Amarilloo, Texas. You know, Chicago is out of these warm bubbles. We're not going to be getting it. So we're not going to notice some of the spectacular stuff going on in this country. But no place could notice it more than Amarilloo, Texas. Perhaps Sundays, warm temperatures going into the low 80s. They're nowhere near that right now, probably in the 60s. Temperatures going into the low 80s Sunday. We drop into the low 40s Sunday night. Highs Monday, cold front moves through. Highs in the upper 50s. That could also very well be part of that stationary front. There's a low pressure system moving down south of Missouri over the next few days. We have another low pressure system moving across Wisconsin for tomorrow. That's going to produce precipitation over in Iowa and Wisconsin, with some of that will be frozen in the form of wet snowflakes, probably along the Illinois-Wisconsin border or southern Wisconsin, perhaps up to an inch of snow. The Chicago National Weather Service tells us some of that might be a heavy wet snow. Chicago might get some wet snowflakes, especially Shabbos morning, but most of the precipitation is likely to form as liquid, to fall as liquid. The Amarillo, Texas, highs on Monday, upper 50s, temperatures dropping into the mid-30s Monday night. Now, that's a normal drop. You have a little bit more than 20 degrees, and it's for a city like Texas. But Tuesday's high temperature, mid-80s. Tuesday night, mid-30s. Now, we've had some cities in the past that we've spoken about on this podcast which do see 50-degree differences between night and day. We even found a city which in Africa that had 60-degree differences between night and day for a month or two. That city is no longer experiencing 60-degree differences between night and day, which is really weird. They're only experiencing 20-degree differences between night and day for a year already, but there was about a month where that city was experiencing 60-degree temperature differences between night and day. 113 during the day, mid-40s at night. That's even more. That's approaching 70-degree differences. That's unbelievable stuff, and that's what was going on. You know, this was a podcast that was given more than a year ago for places in Central Africa. And you look up these cities now, and they're just not experiencing that. Amarillo, Texas, though, has an actual explanation. There's a front that's moving back and forth over the area. So they have a warm spell Sunday. Temperatures are warm again Tuesday, but temperatures only in the upper 50s for Monday. And we have record heat headed for parts of Texas, near record heat or perhaps record heat from over 100 years ago, moving into South Texas for Wednesday and Thursday as highs go into the mid and upper 90s for Brownsville, mid-90s Falcon Lake, Texas, mid-90s for South Padre Island for one day. Brownsville, it's going to be more than one day, and that's coming out of Arizona. They're in for a heat wave for the latter part of next week with highs in the mid and upper 90s as Death Valley goes up to 103. Yuma, Arizona might see an extra day, maybe even an extra 2 days of this heat wave before things calm down. I want to point out one more thing, is that there's a midweek storm system moving across the country between Tuesday and Thursday, affecting the Chicago area. It's complex. It also will be affecting the East Coast. The New York National Weather Service has told us that it's just too complex to figure out right now. The Chicago area will be receiving periods of rain and periods of dry periods. So, periods of dry weather plus periods of rain. But at the very end, on Thursday, snowfall is a possibility in Chicago. Probably no accumulation, but the very end of the storm system could end off as snow. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a good Shabbos.